I thought this was interesting. Igor refused to sell merch at UK venue thanks to merch cuts. I mean, more bands are taking part of this. Is this a thing where it's like, yo, bands are actually just not going to sell merch at store, like at venues? I don't know. But yeah, I'm curious if this is actually going to start to become like a thing or not. Like, what do you guys think? You think this will be sure, there's a contract obviously you sign, but also there's the issue is the monopoly and the status quo. I mean, it's the same thing like with label contracts. It's actually very similar. Bands always complain about their label contracts or have a lot in the past, but sure, they sign the contract, but also it's the standard. You needed the label to accomplish things, to just get your music into existence, right? Nowadays, I mean, you don't need a label. Labels are useful in many capacities and can provide good things in the business part of your, business environment and in the other parts, creative environment of your band, sure. But it's changed, right? Like that, and that's why I'm pretty sure label contracts have gotten a lot better over the years because bands have the freedom to not need labels. That's the thing. That's the difference. This is the case of, well, bands need, they have to sign the fucking things because they have to sell merch, right? At least that's the status quo, right? That's the thing that's been there for so long is bands, you go to a show, you go buy band merch, you have to sell merch, et cetera, which obviously a lot of bands make a good chunk of their money off of merch and that, right? So it's just about, does it evolve? Does there become something that can be a competitor that can make it so these contracts that bands have to sign when they're selling away merch and selling away all the money they make from merch, that it can become more fair? That is where I think the conversation is important, because this is an important part of revenue for the band. Like I said, yes, this has been there for a while. That doesn't mean it doesn't have to adapt. Does that make sense? That doesn't mean it doesn't have to grow and adapt, because if not, I mean, just having a monopoly on it, I mean, it's kind of like the bands have no say, right? Sure, they have a say. Well, they can just say, I don't want to play there, but they don't really have a say. They just have to fucking do it. So as long as there's options, and then if bands choose to do that willingly, like, well, there's options of we can do this, or we can sell at this venue and we have to take this cut. Is it worth it? I mean, that's fine, right? Like, but there's not really a fucking option considering that old, the old mentality of how a band works. You sell merch at the fucking venue. I do hope that adapts personally. I'm not in a band. I don't give a for myself. I just hope it evolves for the scene so that bands can be more incentivized to want to play shows and to sell merch, to grow the scene in general, right? I would go insane if I was a band and I was selling merch and I lost money on the merch we sold. That's kind of fucking insane. I can't think of a business, at least off the top of my head, where you do business, you get people to come in the store, you sell out your product, and you have lost money that day. That's the perspective I'm thinking of. Like, that's just, you have to be doing something wrong. That's not good. That's not a good sustainable business. Even though that's only one revenue stream, of course, of a band. And it's not the only way to sell it. Obviously, bands sell online, right? But it's just, that's not a good feeling. So I hope that evolves so bands don't have to be forced to feel it that way, at least. Don't you think this might make venues make bands sell merch through a contract? They pretty sure they do. That's the point. You mean like forcing them, like, hey, if you play here, you have to sell merch? Because right now it's you play here, and if you sell merch, you have to give us a cut. That's kind of the difference. I don't think venues would change it to that. Because this is the thing. Bands can still go there, bring 2 shirts, and be like, we sold out. It's just like, oh, guys, we sold out. We sold out of merch. Here you go. Here's $10. I don't think a venue could enforce it in that capacity. Like, you have to play here. You have to sell merch, because then a venue is not in charge of a band's how much merch a band has to order or how much merch they have left. It's tricky. So we'll see what happens. But hey, another band that's notable, Igor, doing something. Okay. One of my opinions. I mean, you guys know I think competition in space is healthy. People disagree. Totally cool, because it drives the businesses to then prioritize their consumer. Instead of when one business owns everything, a fucking monopoly, they have the power. They don't give a fuck about the consumer. The consumer has to buy from them no matter what, right? The service or the product. Whereas if there's multiple businesses that are creating competition, well, in order to beat the other business, you have to have a superior product at a better price point usually. Who wins in that? The people who are going to buy it. So I like that personally. You know, I always think that that's in my eyes, the best way for things to fucking go around. It's healthier, and then the consumers win. Yeah, so we'll see. But hey, if it keeps going, it keeps going.